Isikan, and thank you, Dr. Sora, for such a kind introduction and also sharing some of your slides also. So I think it's a normal ECG in pediatrics and ECG in congenital heart disease. I think it's a pretty complex topic. I want to oversimplify for the lack of time. I think 15 minutes, I think you can talk on one specific aspect of ECG in children, like what should be the QT interval in various ages in children, can be a talk for 15 minutes. So I think there are some specific things and there are some things which are non-specific. There are like getting a good quality ECG is not always easy. So you have to be beware of the lead positioning. And unfortunately, we don't have specific guidelines. They're all the borrowed criteria for LVH and RVH from adults. And the position of chest leads may not be as robust as in adults. And thin chest wall may alter the voltages of the chest leads. But as I told you, like there are very, very few lesion-specific ECG changes that you can pick up on the ECG and diagnose a condition. But most importantly, the age-dependent changes are enormous. Like I think the changes are at times in hours when birth happens, like at birth, and then they have very poor sensitivity. So these are all structural diseases. So I think ECG, relying on the ECG to diagnose a structural abnormality may not be adequate in today's time. But they offer significant insights into the overall physiology, hemodynamics, and so on. So we should place limb leads approximately to avoid motion artifacts in some other children. And 12 lead ECG may not be good enough. I think most of us who practice congenital heart disease, we always routinely get V3R and V4R in all patients who are mainly with infants presenting with congenital heart disease. Mostly the standard grains are good, but may have to half the voltages if required. But look at this table, like. So if you look at the LV versus RV mass ratio, it changes quite dramatically with the age. Like for example, at 30 weeks, it's 1.2:1, and that at 6 months, the at birth it is 0.8:1. That is LV mass RV mass ratio is more than LV mass ratio, whereas it reverses in 6 months. In adults, it's 2.5:1. So when it comes to ECG in neonates, I think it is more complex. I told you there are hourly changes that can be there. So in preterm, there is less RV dominance and there is normal left axis deviation. That is the rule. And low QRS and T wave voltages will be there. And there is short PR interval, QRS and QT intervals. And then less heart rate variability due to incomplete autonomic cardiac control. It's almost like a tic-tac rhythm with shorter intervals, a lot of faster heart rates and less variability. That will be the norm. And coming to the term neonate, RVH is normally present. RVH regresses by 1 week, first week. One of the signs of RVH is non-regression of neonatal RVH. So the T wave is V1 till day 5 and gets inverted after day 5. Any upright T wave beyond V1 beyond day 5 suggests RVH. So non-regression of RVH as well as persistence of upright T wave indicates RVH in neonates. So there are some normal variations. That is, you have right axis deviation newborns with RV dominance. There is dominant R wave in V3R and V1 up to 8 years of age. And in majority, by 4 years, V1 R by S ratio becomes less than 1. So this is a very important thing. That is, the inverted T waves in V1 starts by around day 5 to 6 of life, but it persists till adolescence in some of them. That is called juvenile T wave pattern. So normally you have a clockwise loop of the initial vector. That is, you have Q waves in 2, 3, and AVF. And that is normal and it's common in most of the CHTs. There is early repolarization is common, especially in adolescents. And QT interval is highly variable in first 3 days. And generally QT prolongation of more than 450 may be considered as abnormal. So some of the rhythms that are commonly found, abnormalities that are commonly found could be sinus arrhythmias, wandering atrial pacemakers, occasional junctional rhythm in teens, and first degree V block and Menke back in night in the teens, especially who are physically more active. So coming to the real issues, like first of all, like as we look at any congenital heart disease, the first thing that we are supposed to look at is the situs and the position, and then what are the changes, then the chamber enlargement, and is there any specific pattern that we can identify apart from the rhythm. So I'm not going to touch upon the rhythm at all because I think that I cannot cover in time. So I think this diagram that I put up here will be very key to understand all the problems that can happen in situs. It's a very simple one. So situs means the right atrium is to the right and the left, the right of the left atrium. So atrial activation is on the normal vector, like the atrial activation moves from right to left and superior to inferior. So if you look at the graphic here, you can see the P wave is positive in lead 1 and AVF, and it is negative in AVR. It's very simple. It is down, it is going down, and it is going right to left. So it will be positive in lead 1, and it will be positive in AVF, and it will be negative in AVR. So coming to the other changes that can happen. So look at the, for comparison, I put the normal one above, and then you can see the lower one here. So this is situs inversus. In situs inversus, you can clearly see the P wave. P wave, can you see my cursor? Yeah. P wave is inverted in lead 1. It is inverted in AVL. It is upright in AVR as well as upright in AVF. So that is classical of situs inversus. Whereas if you have a coronary sinus rhythm, so there will be the opposite will happen. Like for example, it will be positive in lead 1, positive in AVL, negative in AVF, and negative in AVR. It is going away from AVF and AVR, so it will be negative in both of them. So what will happen if there is a right to left limb lead reversal? What will happen? It will be almost like situs inversus in the frontal QRS plane, but the chest leads will give away the clue, because chest leads will not show any other abnormalities. And another important thing is, in situs inversus, the AVR will be more like AVL, and whereas in right and left limb lead reversal, it will be more like lead 1. So another important thing that you should look at is the ventricular loop. So what is the ventricular loop? So for a ventricular loop, you can have either a D looping or a L looping. So a D looping will be very simple. Like you have a Q wave in V5 and V6 and lead 1 and AVL. Whereas in a L looping, you won't have any Q waves in V5 and V6, and the Q waves will be there in the inferior lead, like 2, 3, and AVF. Like for example, this ECG shows character transposition, which has a PR prolongation, wider QRS complexes, and you can have a Q wave which is more prominent in lead 3, and absence of septal Q wave in V5, V6, which is characteristic of character transposition. So putting them together, so what will happen? So most important thing is, like for identifying the cardiac position, whether you have the levocardia or dextrocardia, the most important thing is, even though there will be clues on the limb leads, but most important clues you will find from the chest leads. So normal progression of QRS means levocardia, and whereas non-progression of QRS is commonly found in dextrocardia. It's very simple. So now, what are the changes of the classical the figure A, which is classical levocardia, and you have situs inversus with mirror image dextrocardia, and you have dextroversion. So basically, what is going to happen is in situs solitus with levocardia, the QRS will be 2 will be greater than 3, whereas the reverse will happen in situs inversus with dextrocardia, even though the chest leads will be totally different, as I told you. And the ECG in situs solitus with dextrocardia, that is dextroversion, is nearly the same like situs solitus with levocardia, but there will be change in the horizontal rotation, which will be coming to this. In the ECG given below, you can clearly see the P wave, the lower one. You can see the P wave is negative in lead 1, and P wave is negative in AVL, and it is upright in AVR, and it is upright in AVF. So clearly indicating there is situs inversus. And you can see the non-progression of QRS complexes. And clearly you can see 3 greater than 2. Whereas combination of an L looping along with dextrocardia will introduce QR complexes in V1. In addition, there will be absence of septal Q waves along with QR complexes in V1 may be there. So this is how we will interpret the findings, and let us keep it very simple. in nutshell, you should just look at the QRS, the P wave axis for identifying the situs, as well as you look at the where it is more prominently seen, lead 3 or lead 2, for identifying various forms of position, like for example from dextrocardia to dextroversion. And then you look at septal Q waves for identifying the initial activation vector. Those things will give you a clue in most of the conditions. To summarize what I've told you, like in a normal position, you can see this is the left top corner, where you can see a P wave, which is positive in lead 1 and AVL and AVF, and is negative in AVR. So this is situs solidus, and the axis will be, QRS axis will be normal. There will be a Q wave in V5 and V6, and there will be a good progression, classical progression from V1 to V6, and the QRS voltage will be 2 greater than 3, and Q wave will be 2 greater than 3 will be there. So this is a typical normal position and normal situs. Whereas you can have a P wave which is negative in lead 1, P wave which is negative in AVL, but is positive in AVF and positive in AVR, which is like a situs inversus. And if you have a dextrocardia, the axis will be turned rightward. There will be Q wave in V5R and V6R, and there will be two-word progression from V1 to V6. But if you take the right-sided leads, there will be a normal progression from V1 to V6, and the QRS voltage will be 3 greater than 2, and there will be upright QRS in AVR, and Q will be more in 3 than 2. So this is like situs inversus mirror image dextrocardia. Coming to the lower panel on the left side, you have the situs solidus, which is represented by positive in lead 1 and AVL and AVF, and negative in AVR, and the axis will be leftward. But importantly, if there is a AV discordance, if you have AV discordance here, then you'll be having a Q wave in V1 and V2, and the progression will be there from V1 to V6, but the QRS voltage will be, especially Q will be greater than 3 than 2. And the combination will alter if you have the dextrocardia along with AV discordance. So coming, I think for the people who are appearing for the exams, this is a very common concept that is often asked, like what is the QRS loop, frontal QRS loop. So that is a clockwise loop in frontal QRS will indicate Q wave in lead 2, 3 and AVF, and it's normal in most CSTs, and its counterclockwise loop in frontal QRS axis will be there. So I think horizontal rotation, I think there will be no rotation. Initially, counterclockwise rotation will be early transition like, and clockwise rotation will be persistence of this. So assessing the ventricular size, this is the nomogram that is given. So various normal amplitudes and altitude that are given. So to diagnose RVH and LVH in children, if you have a newborn, it is greater than 25, will diagnose RVH. First year, if it is greater than 20, LVH is V6 of 12, and any other time V6 of 25. And RVH, various criteria in children include a QR pattern in V1, pure R in V1, TV abnormalities, and mostly all of them are like the same like adult criteria, but we use 98 centile, more than 98 centile. So I think simple one in terms of RSR dash for students appearing for the exam will be 15 millimeter infant and greater than 10 millimeter beyond infancy indicate RVH. And LVH is the same like what we use, except that we use the 98 centile for age. And biventricular hypertrophy almost remain the same criteria for both RVH and LVH, or RVH with normal force of LV and LVH with normal force of RV, or you have what is known as Kautz-Watzelt phenomenon. And then the one typical ECG that we often encounter is in tetralogy of Fallot, where you have RVH with early transition that happens. We don't know the reason. Like, for example, there is a tall R wave in V1, which suddenly become a deep S wave in V2. So we don't know the reason why this happens, but this is a very classical description in tetralogy. So there are various clues that you can identify, like you have classically, if you have right axis deviation with RVH, it could be tetralogy or it could be critical PS with IVS. But where there won't be early transition, there will be changes of strain. CCTGA will have absent Q waves in V5 and V6. And then if you have a left axis deviation, then most likely you are dealing with, if it is LVH, it is tricuspid atresia. If you have RVH, it is likely to be AVSD, AV canal defect with PS. So single ventricle PS will have, this is mostly regarding tetralogy like physiology, or people, especially adults coming with cyanosis. Incomplete RBBB with polymorphic URS complexes will indicate RBBB, whereas single ventricle PS will have monomorphic URS in various V1 to V6. For lack of time, I can't cover all the abnormalities, so I'll be happy to share the slides if anybody wants it. To conclude, electrophysiology follows the anatomy, and age-related changes must be kept in mind while analyzing ECG in a child. A stepwise analysis permits identification of CHT and its morphological characteristics. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Dr.